This is not a story discovered intact. It is reconstructed. Between 1888 and 1892, these four names appear repeatedly across permits, supply logs, and regional court summaries. They entered into a partnership defined on paper as cooperative and equitable. No document references conflict. No record mentions violence. And yet, by 1893, the claim was permanently sealed by county order. Ownership reverted to the state. No distribution of gold was ever declared. Two of the men left the region. One was never found. What survives is not evidence of what happened underground, but proof of how quickly trust narrowed once the search became specific. This narrative does not rely on legend. It follows what was written, and what abruptly stopped being written. Because some discoveries are not marked by what is found, but by who is no longer there to claim it. On March 14, 1888, a mining claim identified as Red Hollow Extension was refiled with the El Dorado County Land Registry. The claim referenced coordinates previously abandoned more than a decade earlier, citing incomplete excavation due to flooding and unstable rock. The reactivation itself was not unusual. What followed was. The primary signatory was Samuel Whitaker, born 1849 in Placerville, California, listed occupation, prospector. Whitaker had held partial claims throughout the Sierra Nevada since the early 1870s, none producing sustained output. His previous filings show a pattern of persistence rather than success. Attached to the registry document was a newly commissioned survey, prepared by Thomas Caldwell, born 1856 in Carson City, Nevada, occupation land surveyor. Caldwell's map introduced slight deviations from earlier measurements. The differences were small, measured in feet rather than yards, but significant enough to reposition the most promising section of the claim deeper into the hillside. No explanation for these adjustments appears in the record. Two additional names appear in the accompanying partnership agreement. Eli Monroe, born 1852 in Auburn, California, occupation mining laborer, was listed as operational support. His compensation was recorded as a fixed percentage of extracted material, contingent on yield. Jacob Harlan, born 1844 in Deadwood, Dakota Territory occupation, investor, provided capital for equipment, food supplies, and mule transport. Harlan did not sign the land claim directly. His involvement was routed through promissory notes and advance receipts, suggesting a preference for distance rather than presence. The agreement defined the partnership as cooperative. Each party was assigned a role. Decision-making authority was described as shared. Dispute resolution was deferred until necessary. There is no record indicating that the men met together at the time of signing. Correspondence suggests staggered communication, letters delivered days apart, terms agreed separately rather than collectively. This detail matters. In the weeks following the filing, supply orders increased. Picks, explosives, timber supports. The quantities exceeded what was typical for exploratory digging. The implication is clear. Someone expected depth. By April 1888, excavation began. Initial progress reports were sparse, but optimistic. Rock composition improved steadily. Water intrusion was managed. No yield was reported, but none was expected at this stage. The tone of the notes implies confidence without celebration. What is absent from these records is caution. No contingency plans appear, no exit strategy, no provisions for disagreement beyond vague language. The partnership was formed on the assumption that discovery would resolve all uncertainty. This was the first quiet error, not in greed, but in structure. By early May 1888, discrepancies began to surface, not as accusations, but as measurements. Caldwell's survey notes referenced boundary markers that did not appear in Whitaker's earlier filings. The distance between two reference points had shifted by 6 feet. On paper, the adjustment was minor. In practice, it moved the projected vein closer to the eastern face of the slope. No amendment was filed to explain the change. Caldwell maintained that the revision corrected an older error. Whitaker accepted the explanation without comment. In letters, he described the variation as within tolerance. Tolerance, however, had not been defined anywhere in the agreement. By June, excavation had reached a depth that made withdrawal expensive. Timber supports were installed. Explosives were rationed carefully. Supply costs increased. Harlan's advances doubled, then doubled again. Each transfer arrived with fewer words attached. Monroe's logs, brief and practical, began noting longer hours and steeper angles. He recorded tool failures without complaint. Water seepage appeared intermittently and was managed with additional bracing. No halt was considered. What did change was access. Schedules tightened. Dig times overlapped less. The men rotated less frequently than planned. Tasks that required pairs were reassigned to individuals. Nothing in the records calls this a disagreement. It reads like optimization. Privately, Whitaker requested updated sketches from Caldwell rather than copies of the originals. Caldwell provided them, but the scale markings differed. Subtle, easy to miss unless compared side by side. Harlan's correspondence grew sharper. He requested projected yields, asked for dates, asked who controlled the face at depth. His letters imply a belief that information was unevenly distributed. No response corrected that belief. By August, progress notes shortened. Where earlier entries described conditions, later ones listed outcomes only. Footage advanced. Supports held. No yield recorded. The absence of gold did not slow momentum. It narrowed it. In late September 1888, an equipment order was placed for additional blasting powder, exceeding what Caldwell's latest depth estimates required. The justification reads, anticipating obstruction. No obstruction had been documented. Around this time, Monroe's name begins appearing less frequently in the daily tallies, not absent, just reduced. When listed, his hours are isolated. The record does not explain why. The partnership agreement contained no clause for renegotiation at depth. It assumed alignment would persist until discovery resolved all questions. With each additional foot, that assumption became more fragile. There's still no mention of conflict, no language of threat or refusal. The records remain procedural, but procedures only hold when trust fills the gaps between them. By November 1888, those gaps had widened enough to notice. In early December 1888, a notation appears in Monroe's hand that does not match his earlier entries. It records a change in rock color and density at a depth slightly shallower than Caldwell's revised projection. The note is brief. Transition zone, unusual consistency. No assay result is attached. No sample receipt follows. Whitaker acknowledged the entry 2 days later. His reply does not ask for confirmation. It asks for continuation. Caldwell's next survey sketch, dated December 9th, shifts the projected strike again, this time by inches rather than feet. The adjustment is justified as refinement. the margin notes mention alignment with observed transition. The implication is that the map has begun to follow the dig, not the other way around. From this point, the record changes tone. Access logs indicate that Caldwell visited the site after hours on 3 consecutive nights. These visits are not listed as inspections. They are listed as measurements. No secondary witness is recorded. The lighting expense for those nights is billed separately. Harlan's correspondence accelerates. He requests custody of duplicate maps. He asks who authorizes changes in blasting angles. He asks whether any samples have been removed from the site for private testing. None of these questions receive written denial. They receive delay. By January 1889, labor is reassigned permanently. Monroe's name returns to the tallies with longer blocks, but fewer annotations. His notes stop describing conditions and start reporting distances only. The entries are precise to the inch. The handwriting tightens. The absence of assays becomes conspicuous. The agreement did not require them at this stage, but custom did. Harlan's letters now include deadlines. He references sunk costs. He references obligations. Whitaker's replies grow shorter. He emphasizes progress. He does not share documentation. On January 27th, an unfiled memo appears among the papers, a draft, unsigned. It proposes redefining operational authority below the transition zone. The language is careful. It does not accuse. It reframes efficiency as necessity. The memo is never countersigned. 2 days later, the night visits stop. In February, blasting resumes at an accelerated pace. The amount of powder logged exceeds previous averages without a corresponding increase in recorded depth. Supports are reinforced beyond requirement. Timber orders spike. The dig has narrowed. The team has not. Trust, once diffuse, has begun to concentrate, held by fewer hands for shorter periods in spaces without witnesses. The records do not say who suggested this configuration. They only show that it was accepted. And from that moment on, every action assumes that someone else already knows more. The first physical indication arrives without ceremony. On February 18, 1889, Monroe's log includes a single line written heavier than the rest. Metallic fleck observed in fractured host rock. There's no description of size, no sketch, no sample number. The entry is bracketed, as if set apart from routine notation. Whitaker's response is immediate and private. Subsequent entries indicate that the material was removed before daylight. There is no chain of custody note, no assay receipt filed with the county. The omission is not illegal. It is strategic. Caldwell's next map revision, dated February 21st, introduces a shaded zone at depth labeled only as anomalous. The scale is reduced. Bearings tighten. The map ceases to depict the broader claim and focuses almost entirely on a narrow corridor of rock. This is the first time the document stops resembling a survey and starts resembling a plan. Harlan reacts sharply. His letters reference risk exposure and demand, visibility. He requests an on-site audit. He asks for escrow of any extracted material. He notes, formally, that capital was extended on the assumption of transparency. The tone shifts from partnership to protection. Whitaker answers once, briefly. He assures Harlan that no yield has been verified and that premature intervention would jeopardize progress. He promises updates upon confirmation. No definition of confirmation is offered. From this point forward, documents begin to lag events. Supply orders are filled before requests appear in the ledger. Equipment receipts arrive without signatures. Lighting expenses double. Guarding is implied through the purchase of locks and chains that were not part of the original plan. Monroe's handwriting degrades. His entries shorten further. Where once he noted conditions, he now records timestamps: arrival, descent, exit. He does not list who worked alongside him. On March 3rd, the dig pauses for 8 hours without explanation. No incident report is filed. When work resumes, the depth recorded exceeds what would have been possible given the logged blasting schedule. The discrepancy is not addressed. Caldwell ceases submitting sketches to the shared file. Instead, references appear to current working diagrams, copies of which are not included. The phrase appears 3 times and then disappears. Harlan's final letter from this period includes a demand for suspension pending clarification. It is postmarked March 6th. It is not acknowledged. On March 9th, a county inspector's name appears in the margins of the ledger without a corresponding inspection report. The note reads only, "Conditions observed." No outcome is recorded. The documents, still procedural in appearance, now conceal more than they describe. The claim has not been denied. The gold has not been declared. But the search has crossed a threshold. From this point on, the records are no longer tracking progress. They are tracking control. The first name to thin out in the records is Eli Monroe's. After March 12, 1889, his signature no longer appears beneath the daily tallies. His handwriting remains, but the alignment shifts. Notes are entered later, compiled rather than written on site. Hours are rounded, distances summarized. The precision that had characterized his earlier logs disappears. No explanation is offered. On March 18th, a payroll adjustment is issued in Monroe's name, despite no corroborating attendance. The amount reflects partial compensation. The receipt line is unsigned. The absence is treated administratively, not personally. Caldwell assumes primary oversight below the transition zone. His authority is not formalized, but his presence increases. Measurement markers are repositioned. Chalk codes appear on tunnel supports without legend. The working diagrams referenced earlier replace prior surveys entirely. Whitaker's control becomes procedural. He authorizes expenditures, schedules access, and maintains correspondence with the county. His language remains calm, even reassuring. Progress is reported as steady. Risk is described as manageable. Harlan, operating from a distance, escalates through channels rather than confrontation. He files notices of concern, requests mediation, asks for joint verification. Each request arrives within proper timelines. Each is answered late, incompletely, or not at all. In April 1889, Harlan travels to the site unannounced. His arrival is documented only indirectly, through supply requisitions for additional provisions and the temporary cessation of night work. When logs resume, they show consolidated shifts and reduced access lists. Harlan's signature appears once more, under a single entry marked "Inspection Performed." There is no appended report. Within weeks, blasting patterns change. Explosives are concentrated deeper, faster. Supports are installed beyond standard redundancy. The dig narrows to a corridor that allows passage by one man at a time. The claim's operational footprint contracts while its intensity grows. On May 2nd, Monroe's name is absent entirely, not even in compiled notes. His tools are logged as accounted for. His wages cease. There's no notice of termination, no letter of separation, no accident report. the absence is processed as resolution. By June 1889, correspondence between partners becomes compartmentalized. Caldwell writes to Whitaker. Whitaker responds to Harlan. Caldwell and Harlan communicate through intermediaries. Messages do not cross intact. The partnership still exists on paper. Legally, nothing has collapsed. Practically, the search has restructured itself around assumptions that no longer require agreement. Each remaining participant now behaves as if someone else has already crossed a line. In the absence of proof, preemption becomes logic, and logic, once narrowed, accelerates its own conclusions. The incident does not appear where it should. There is no dated report, no injury log, no county notice issued at the time it occurred. Instead, its presence is inferred through absence, gaps that cannot be reconciled by delay alone. On June 17, 1889, work ceases for a full day. The ledger lists no weather disruption, no supply shortage, no equipment failure. The page is left blank except for a single notation added later in a different hand. Operations paused. When activity resumes, the configuration has changed. Supports are reinforced without recorded justification. Access is restricted to two names, Whitaker and Caldwell. Night work resumes under maintenance classification. Lighting expenses triple. Timber orders exceed what the newly recorded depth would require. Harlan's next letter is addressed to the county clerk rather than his partners. He requests confirmation that the claim remains compliant with safety statutes. He cites the absence of inspection. Records following increased blasting intensity. The clerk's response, dated June the 26th, acknowledges the inquiry and states that conditions will be observed at the next available opportunity. That opportunity arrives sooner than expected. On July 2nd, a county inspector files a site note, brief, non-descriptive. The phrase, "unstable conditions at depth" appears without measurement. No enforcement action is taken. The claim is permitted to continue operation pending remediation. Remediation does not occur. Instead, the dig advances laterally along the shaded zone first introduced in Caldwell's February map. This corridor does not align with earlier projections. It bypasses safer shafts. It shortens access to whatever lies ahead. By August, the record of extracted material becomes ambiguous. Equipment logs indicate handling capacity beyond what waste rock would require. Containers appear and disappear from inventory without description. Harlan demands escrow again. He receives silence. Whitaker's correspondence grows defensive but remains procedural. He references costs, delays, responsibility to complete what has already been invested. He avoids the word gold. He avoids all specifics. Caldwell's documentation ceases altogether. The final map attributed to him is undated. It is folded, stained, and not filed with the county. Its markings depict a compressed area of dense notation, arrows converging on a point just beyond the latest recorded depth. No legend explains the symbols. On September 14th, a blast is logged that exceeds prior averages by nearly 50%. There is no corresponding depth measurement recorded afterward. The next day's ledger contains only supply totals and no operational notes. 2 days later, the inspector returns, this time with authority. The county order that follows is concise. It cites unsafe working conditions and unresolved dispute among claimants. The claim is sealed. Equipment is to be removed. Further access is prohibited. There's no mention of injury, no mention of discovery, no mention of loss. By October 1890, ownership reverts to the state. The records close. Whatever occurred underground is not reflected directly. But the shape of the closure suggests that the decision was not about danger alone. It was about containment. What followed, the sealing of Red Hollow Extension, did not resemble an ending. It resembled redistribution. Whitaker's correspondence resumes first. In November 1890, he files a petition requesting limited access to remove personal equipment. The language is precise. No mention of documents. No mention of samples. The request is denied on procedural grounds and resubmitted twice with minor revisions. Each revision narrows the scope further. Harlan's actions move in the opposite direction. Between December 1890 and February 1891, he initiates civil notices in 2 counties, none naming gold, all citing breach of transparency. The filings ask for accounting, not damages. The implication is careful. If material was handled privately, it must be acknowledged publicly. Caldwell does not respond to any filing. His name appears once more indirectly in a freight manifest from Sacramento, dated January 7, 1891. The shipment lists crates marked survey instruments. The weight exceeds reasonable calibration equipment by several hundred pounds. The consignee is a third party unrelated to the claim. No further records place Caldwell in California after that date. Whitaker denies knowledge of the shipment when questioned. His letter, preserved among county papers, emphasizes that all survey materials were either destroyed or sealed on site. The phrasing suggests that he understands exactly which instruments are being referenced. Monroe remains absent. Payroll queries sent to his last listed address are returned unopened. A notation appears in a margin, presumed relocated. No destination is provided. The assumption stands uncontested. By mid-1891, the dispute fragments. Harlan's filings stall in procedural delay. Whitaker shifts attention to a new claim farther north, filing alone. His capitalization is modest, inconsistent with recent outlays, but sufficient to proceed. In parallel, quiet transactions occur. 2 assay submissions appear in regional lab books months apart, both small in quantity, both listing private carriers. The origin fields are incomplete. The purity is high. The amounts are too minor to matter alone. Together, they establish possibility. The county takes no action. Without a crime, there's nothing to prosecute. Without declared yield, there is nothing to tax. The seal remains. In 1892, the papers thin out entirely. Correspondence fades. Filings conclude. Names scatter into other records. Marriages, property transfers, relocations, none intersecting again. The mountain keeps its ground. The claim keeps its silence. What remains is inference, that something was found too late to be shared, too early to be secured, and too divisive to be admitted. And that once the ground closed, the search did not end. It simply left the mountain. Time does not resolve disputes. It only clarifies which ones can no longer be reopened. By 1893, the men associated with Red Hollow Extension are no longer connected by paper, but their trajectories show a quiet symmetry. Each moves forward as if carrying something unspoken that cannot be deposited or displayed. Whitaker's next filings are cautious. He registers 2 minor claims in Plumas County, both abandoned within 18 months. His correspondence with suppliers emphasizes liquidity and discretion. He avoids partnerships. Equipment is leased, not purchased. The scale suggests access to capital that arrives briefly, then disappears again. Harlan's legal efforts taper off without conclusion. In 1894, he sells off several holdings unrelated to mining, consolidating cash rather than acquiring land. His letters to former associates adopt a neutral tone. There's no accusation, only distance. By 1896, he relocates to Omaha, Nebraska, entering rail supply contracts that do not require disclosure beyond invoices. Caldwell's absence becomes conspicuous only in retrospect. Census records from 1900 list a Thomas Caldwell of matching age in British Columbia, occupation, consulting engineer. No prior residence is noted. The listing includes no dependents. No explanation accompanies the transition. Monroe remains unresolved. A single entry in an 1898 coroner's log from Nevada County records an unidentified laborer recovered from a riverbank months after death. The description is minimal. The age range overlaps. No name is assigned. No follow-up appears in any file connected to the claim. What binds these outcomes is not wealth or ruin. It is avoidance. None of the men returns to contest the seal. None seeks arbitration once statutes expire. None attempts to capitalize on rumor or legend. Their silence is not protective. It is final. In 1901, the county quietly reviews several sealed claims for potential reclassification. Red Hollow extension is excluded. The margin note reads only, previously resolved. No resolution is on record. The mountain remains undisturbed. The absence of proof does not preclude conclusion. It suggests one arrived privately and proved incompatible with partnership. Gold, once narrowed to certainty, transforms cooperation into urgency. Urgency is rarely shared. The documents do not testify to murder or theft. They testify to misalignment, the point where discovery ceases to be divisible and therefore ceases to be safe. By the time the paper ends, the truth has already done its work. Whatever lay beneath Red Hollow extension did not enrich those who pursued it together. It separated them cleanly enough to prevent reunion. And that separation, preserved across decades of careful omission, is the only yield the records can confer. What follows is not recorded as fact. It is assembled from timing, from inventory, from what appears immediately before the seal and never again. On June 16, 1889, the claim's activity does not register as urgent. Supply tallies are routine. Lighting is ordered in standard quantities. No visitor is listed. No notice is filed with the county. To the ledger, it is an ordinary day. Underground, it could not have been. The configuration at that point allowed passage by one man at a time. The corridor Caldwell had traced, the narrow extension beyond the transition zone, had reached its furthest recorded depth. Timber supports were closely spaced, suggesting unstable pressure. The air circulation notes indicate reduced flow. These conditions required coordination. Yet the access list for that day contains only two names: Whitaker, Caldwell. Monroe's absence is not noted. Harlan is elsewhere. The blast logged late that evening exceeds necessity. The charge size would have fractured more than exploratory rock. It would have been intended to open, not test. No follow-up depth measurement appears because none was needed. The purpose was not extension, it was exposure. From this point, the reconstruction relies on omission. Lighting expenses spike afterward, not during the blast, but after. This suggests inspection, not labor, examination, not removal. The duration indicated by fuel usage implies hours spent stationary, enough time to observe, enough time to understand. There is no record of a sample being logged. There is no assay request. If gold was exposed, it was not processed through proper channels. It was assessed privately. This is where the partnership fails. A discovery of minimal yield could have been negotiated. A discovery of moderate yield could have been mediated. A discovery of singular significance could not be shared without recalculation. And recalculation requires agreement. There is no evidence of agreement. The following: days blank ledger, 8 hours of nothing, aligns with confrontation rather than accident. Confrontations do not leave debris, they leave delay. When work resumes, the configuration has changed. Access restricted, documentation reduced, authority centralized. These are not safety responses, they are control responses. If the corridor contained nothing, this escalation would be irrational. If it contained something indivisible, it becomes inevitable. Caldwell's night measurements that cease afterward suggest he no longer needed confirmation. Whitaker's silence toward Harlan indicates the conflict had already shifted beyond negotiation. And Monroe's disappearance, administratively resolved without comment, suggests that not everyone present could be trusted with knowledge obtained below. No record confirms violence. No record denies it. But the structure of the response, the speed of closure, the county's reliance on dispute, the refusal to reopen even years later, indicates risk that exceeded geology. The mountain was not sealed to protect workers. It was sealed to prevent repetition. By the time the state asserted authority, whatever had been revealed underground had already escaped the partnership intact, but not intact enough to be used openly. The last day below did not end in collapse. It ended in certainty. And certainty, once reached unevenly, leaves no safe way back to collaboration. When the final county seal was placed on Red Hollow Extension, the decision was framed as procedural. Unsafe conditions, disputed ownership, no viable path forward. The language was sufficient to close a file, but insufficient to close a story. From the perspective of the records, nothing of value was ever recovered. No assays were logged, no distribution recorded, no tax filings followed. On paper, the claim produced nothing but expense. And yet, the behavior that followed contradicts absence. Men do not abandon opportunity quietly unless the cost of speaking exceeds the value of profit. They do not relocate, fragment partnerships, or erase their own paper trails over nothing. Silence at this scale is not coincidence. It is management. The mountain remains unchanged. No subsequent filings were accepted for that coordinate range. Even decades later, when technology improved and the demand for minerals returned, the land was bypassed. Not declared protected, simply avoided. What happened below Red Hollow Extension was never confirmed because it did not need to be. The search did not fail. It ended in a way that made repetition undesirable. This record does not ask you to believe in hidden treasure. It asks you to observe behavior, patterns of omission, the precision with which uncertainty was contained. Gold does not corrupt gradually. It narrows options until only fracture remains. If you are listening to this and recognize the names, the location, or the fragments, if you have encountered documents, oral histories, or references that align with this reconstruction, this record remains incomplete by design. Some truths are never filed because they cannot be shared safely, but they can sometimes be acknowledged. If you know more, or if you have come across material related to Red Hollow extension or similar claims from this period, you are invited to add context below. The record remains open, even if the ground does not. What lies beneath is unchanged. Only the silence around it evolves.